Thank you, Darren. Now, Darren didn't give me a time limit, the last time I was here, Darren actually got ready to go on stage. He had told me 30 minutes. Then he said, "Can you do it in 10?" And I said, "No problem." Anytime somebody brings you in, and if it's less, it's more challenging. But sometimes, as my mom would say, less is always best. So we're going to hit it with a short stick, as some of the ministers would say, as we go today. I'm glad to be back here again up in Shreveport, and Miss Markell was asking me how often I get up here. She said, Shreveport is that forgotten land in Louisiana because you're so close to Texas, just south of Arkansas, but you're still part of Louisiana. See, I'm a Mississippi boy. I grew up in a small town called Prentiss, Mississippi. For those of you who don't know where it is, south of Jackson, north of Hattiesburg, right in the middle of nowhere. So Piney Woods, a lot like like Shreveport is. And so when I came here, I realized that Louisiana is technically 3 states. There's New Orleans, there's south of Alexandria, and then there's north of Alexandria. It's 3 distinct states, and they're all different. But that's the great part about it. That's what makes it a great state. So Darren, thanks a lot again for inviting me up, and to the board of the Shreveport African American Chamber. It's a pleasure to be here again. So as I share today, hopefully I can just leave you with 1 or 2 things. People often ask me, Samantha, are you a motivational speaker? I said, no. I don't try to motivate anybody, because that's not my job. But I do try to teach a little bit. I try to share 1 or 2 things that you can put into your tank. Because see, I don't know where you are at today. We're all in different places along this journey, and it is a journey. It is a journey. And so on this journey, I want to just share with you 1 or 2 things that will help you make it better, I like to say, to make it gooder. So 2 things are going to happen today, and don't judge me. I am who I am. I love acronyms, and I will kill the King's English. My 10th grade English teacher, Miss Posey Sullivan, and Mr. Bradford down here, Attorney Bradford, being an English major from Dillard, he probably sitting there cringing. That's bad English there, sir. But I do know better, but I don't always do better. Does anybody else know better but don't do better? So if you could, tell your neighbor, do what you know and not what you feel. Okay, now turn there and tell the other neighbor the same thing. Do what you know and not what you feel. So that's going to be important as we move forward today. One of the things I want to share with you is just going to be 4 P's. So, keep me honest here. Sometimes I get on a tangent. My wife tells me sometimes I just talk too much, and I'm okay with that. So she's here with me today, and I have to say this here. I did win the bet. It was not a chicken dinner. Okay, so I don't know. We didn't decide on the prize, but I did win the bet. Okay. And so, as you begin to think about this journey and you look at the reason and the purpose of an organization such as the Shreveport African American Chamber, bringing together what is traditionally disadvantaged businesses. And somebody will say, well, how can an African American business be a disadvantaged business? Well, when I go into companies and I'm talking to someone, they talk about the business their great grandfather left them, and then the next day I'm talking to a business owner who started up 2 years ago. Which race would you rather run? You want to start on the 90-yard line, or you want to start at 0 and ask who's going to win the race? Life is not necessarily fair, but we have to recognize that there is a difference. We have to recognize that if we're all going to finish together, sometimes we have to reach back and help others. And so as we begin to think about that, I want to challenge you to jump back to Genesis. Yeah, Darren, I am going to use a biblical connotation here. Darren always take you back to church. Last time I was here, he said, Howard, you should talk to some of our preachers because you were able to get down in 10 minutes instead of the 30 minutes that we had told you. But think about Joseph. How many of you in here know the story of Joseph? Joseph was what? A dreamer. If you look at it, and I wrote a couple things down because I don't want to misquote the Bible, so I actually wrote it down. In Genesis 37:5, it talked about, now Joseph had a dream, and he told to his brothers, and they hated him even more. Well, I mean, how many of you have ever been in that boat? You share what God had really put on your heart. So what I'm going to talk about today is follow the dream in your heart and not the situation in your life. All right, so I want you to just think about that, because right beside that dream is your purpose. See, God created each and every one of us in here for a different reason. That's why he gave you a different DNA, a different thumbprint, and a different personality. You can be identical twins in the world's eye, but in God's, you're totally different. And be okay with that. I want you to become okay with that. And so when you look at your purpose, you got to think about, what is the meaning of purpose? See, purpose is really determined by the Creator. You know, I was talking to a young lady here. She's over at Southern University Shreveport campus. And so she designs. Give it up. Yeah, we got some people here from Southern University. All right. So she's a business major. And I asked her this question. I said, so what is it that you want to be? What do you desire? She said, I want to be a designer. I love fashion. And so whatever she creates, she determines the purpose. So our Creator determined our purpose, but it's up to us to look inside of ourselves to find that purpose. Now, the powerful part about it, when you look it up, I went to the English dictionary, so you can go and pull it up yourself, and it says purpose is two things. It's a noun and a verb. And so the noun is about being. So you must first become what that dream is, and then you must do something with it. And see, oftentimes we don't do that. We don't seek it. We were sitting here at the table sharing about where we're from, and we all go back to that, and you always have fond memories of your childhood. But I remember more specifically, as an engineering major at Southern University, I was going through the process. Didn't love it. Student government president, enjoyed all the stuff outside of class. I would go to class just so I can get to the other stuff. That was just me. And it's, and the hard part about it, I have a son in college, and I think he's doing some of the same things, and it's hard for me to tell him my whole story right now, so hopefully he doesn't see all this. But I can remember sitting on the couch in Prentiss, Mississippi on a Saturday afternoon. It was the beginning of my first senior year at Southern University. I took the 5-year plan, and no problem with that. I was okay with that, okay? My first senior year. And I was about to take the second. So, I remember my dad calling me one time, and you didn't have cell phones. So he said, son, when are you going to graduate? I said, well, Dad, I hadn't asked you for money in 3 years. This is fun. I got this figured out now. But my mom said, you're not having fun, are you, son? I said, Mom, I'm having a blast. She said, no, you're not enjoying what you're doing. So I heard her, but I never did really listen to the question. The question should be, am I living on purpose? Are you living your purpose? And so she said, you should be a teacher. That's what she said. And literally said that. And fast forward, over 30 some years ago, I was home. She said, son, you're finally teaching. I'm glad you're living what you're supposed to be doing. And that was her words to me. And it just meant a lot. But I think about that, and I ask, how many of you have heard the call, but you didn't listen to it? How many of you are at a job versus doing the work that you were designed to do? See, there's a difference. Oftentimes when we talk about a chamber or small business owners, no, everyone is not designed to be a small business owner. Sometimes your job frees you up to do the work that you're supposed to do. Your job provides for the purpose that God created you for. So be okay with that. And I often tell students this every time. See, sometimes that job is just a proving ground. See, when you think about Joseph, when he dreamed, he immediately got thrown in a pit. Then then after he survived the pit, went on a long journey in a foreign land, he wound up serving the king, wound up in a prison, and then we'll come back to the rest of the story. But as you think about that, have you had that purpose-finding moment? As a small business owner, I challenge you to ask yourself, does your business serve a specific purpose? Do you work to live that purpose every day? See, that's something you should do daily. I want you to finish this quote for me. Rome was not what? Now, do you know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say for our broadcast majors and the older people in the room? Because the younger folks are like, who is Paul Harvey? But it was just the iconic person that always had the rest of the story. But the rest of the story is that Rome was built daily. So what are you doing each day to build your Rome? What are you doing each day to make a difference in this community? What are you doing each day to reach back and help someone who hasn't been there? As I was talking to Miss Markel, and she's from Beaumont, Texas, over in Jefferson Parish, county. See, I'm saying parish instead of counties. And we started talking, and one of her mentors is actually a classmate of mine, Miss Michelle McCallop, and she said she met her in high school, and she helped feed her purpose, helped feed her passion for journalism and taught her things, and someone that she can call and reach out to. How many people you have in your life that you're helping? I remember I had a chance to work on my first book was Southern Greats, and one of your own, Reverend Leslie Smith, who's in Houston, Texas right now. He runs an organization called Change Happens. It started out of a dream in his heart, and he talked about that dream. The dream was getting people out of crack houses. And they're about to celebrate 30 years of existence in an organization called Change Happens. But he said it just kept going, and he was making almost 6 figures at the time, and he quit his job to start that dream. At the time I interviewed him, we were sitting in a 27,000 square foot building that was debt free. He was serving over 5,000 students a week, 5,000 students a week. And right down the street, right there on the corner of Elgin and Scott in 3rd Ward, Houston, were a row of houses that were transitional homes. See, your dream allows you and helps you to live your purpose. So I want you to focus on the dream that's in your heart and not that situation, not the situation that's in your life, because the situation will blind you. The next thing I want you to begin to think about are those principles. Do you have your list of non-negotiables? Those principles and those values that you will not allow anyone to change, no matter what. One of the beautiful things when I went on the website there for the city here, and actually there's a set of core values and principles for the city. And then it also gives a step of how it is, of what we should do in each one of those. Sticking with the book of Genesis, and if you go to that 39th chapter, and it made me think about Joseph again, and it said, and it came to pass after these things, his master wife cast in longing eyes on Joseph, and he said, lie with me. But he refused. He stuck to a core principle that he had inside of him, even if that principle was going to take him to prison. How many of you as business owners run into situations where you can take the shortcut? And you've taken it. But when you look back and you realize if you're stuck to that principle, that core values that you were taught, that you had learned. Because one of the things that I've learned in life is that principles are few and processes are many. They're only a core principle. I don't care what industry you go across. So I've had a chance to consult in, probably over 50 or 60 different industries, but it all boils down to core principles. And in business, is one principle: make more than you spend, then you can continue to grow. It's that simple. Now, but it's also that hard. In life, do more for others than they do for you. Do better for others than they do for you. And people will always want you around. Serve others. Those are just core principles. What are your principles? What are the values that you're living by? What are the values you're teaching your team? What are the values you're sharing with your family? And see, when you really do that, you'll see that there's a huge difference in your business. Because like-minded people will begin to seek you out for what you do. They'll say something, along this line. There's just something that he does. And when I think about that is, you're going through a mayor, you got another election coming up, in December, I believe it is. You have a runoff here. But I think back to a city called Atlanta, and a guy named Maynard Jackson. And happened to be a frat brother. Any alphas in the house today? See a few. All right. And so, but he had a couple core principles, and he had a principle of inclusion. How do I include all businesses? Because see, one of the things that he realized that if there's a huge economic discrepancy, a huge social discrepancy, then the city can only grow to a certain level. And so what he did was, when they got ready to build the international terminal at Atlanta, he mandated that X amount would have to be set aside. Yeah, I did say that word, set aside, to qualify. See, that's often is forgotten when you talk about giving people an opportunity. See, they say to set aside, but they don't remind you that they have to be qualified, and oftentimes overqualified. And I happened to meet the company that, quote, got to participate because of that. And the name of the company is CAFR. And it actually, it was 5 guys came together, 5 engineers, 4 African Americans and 1 Indian, came together to build this civil engineering firm. And that was a jump start for them. That was an opportunity. Fast forward, 2018, from 1970s. Young man from Atlanta, majoring in civil engineering, going to Prairie View A&M, stopped at home at my house, and he and my son are friends. I said, where did you work this summer? Guess where he told me he worked. But if Mayor Jackson had not stuck to those principles, death threats, people telling him he was crazy, he was not going to be reelected because of that. So what are the principles and values that you're sticking to? What are you doing? So I want to challenge you to write those 3 down. What are your 3 non-negotiables? Share it with your team. Everyone around you should know what your non-negotiables are, what it is that you won't do. You know, then the next piece, see, if you hadn't noticed, I talked about purpose. What was the next one? Principles. And then, okay, so the next one is going to be P. I'm simple. See, that's the way we do it in Mississippi. I don't know how, I'm still learning Louisiana, but we keep it simple so we can learn it, memorize it, and then repeat it is the key thing. The next thing we talk about is planning. See, oftentimes we don't create a plan. You know, when I look at how many small business owners we have here in the room today, how many of you can share your written plan with me for the next 91 days? I'm not talking about the business plan that the banker told you had to have in order to get the loan. I'm talking about the plan that you're actually going to live every day. See, it's 2 different plans. The plan that's going to allow you to do things outside of your business. You know, so the plan that's going to allow you to go over to Dallas for 3 days on sales calls while your business still operates. See, that's going to be critical for you. What is your plan? You know, what are you doing to implement that plan? And I challenge you to think about that as we come up, especially on the close of the year. So we're right at the end of the year. A lot of times people on December the 26th begin to make New Year's resolutions. You know, they resolve to do this, and the terrible part about resolutions is that they typically dissolve by January the 15th. You know, they resolve for January 1st, and the 15th they're gone. But a plan is different. You know, when you're looking at it from a business standpoint, you can plan, you can create your new year now by creating the plan for the next 91 days. And I got with Darren, and he asked me, could I stay over? So we're going to be, Darren is the name of the place, the Cohab, is it? So at the Cohab tomorrow morning, working with business owners on creating their strategic game plan for 2019. So we'll be doing that from 8 to 12. You can see me out in the lobby afterwards, and just let me know you want to participate in that. But what is your plan? You know, when I look back at my journey as a business owner, the good times were always preceded by a great plan. You know, one of the things that, you know, we got city attorney here, and you have a permitting department here in Shreveport. We were talking about how country, and this was from his words, from a Shreveport guy, how country it used to be in Shreveport. Right, Brother Bradford? Is that what you said? Way out there. But it's a lot of building that has happened. So all of a sudden, you come up with an idea. The first thing the city asks you, let me see your plans. And then before that, you have to sit with an architect who asks you, why and what is the purpose of this building? So before any plans can be done, the purpose must be determined. And then the last one are people. See, one of the most powerful quotes I ever heard was from Andrew Young. I guess you guys say I hang out in Atlanta a lot. I just happened to be there. I went to visit a guy by the name of Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. And, had a chance to meet him, but just so happened as God would have it, Brother Andrew Young was speaking. Because actually when I walk on campus, they say, you with Brother Young's team? I said, yes, I am part of his team. Okay, what am I supposed to do? But we show up, and if you ever speak to students, there's always this question. What is the key to success? They're always going to ask that question. So if you ever speak to students, be ready to answer that question. Sister Tara Bradford, she, as a Formula Bachelor's of AKA, she would travel around, and she probably always got that question. But he shared something real powerful. He said, the key to success is who you know, who knows you, and how you manage the relationship. And as the last part is managing a relationship. So the student said, can you expound a little bit, Mr. Young, Ambassador Young? He said, well, I went to Howard University for my master's, and I couldn't afford to go home for Thanksgiving. So I would cook a mean gumbo, and this was in his words. And he said, most of the folks that couldn't go home were from foreign countries. But in the time, if a student was from an African country at a Howard University, most likely his parents were very high in the government. He said, so fast forward, now I become a dignitary. When I walk in, it was, hey, Andy, not Ambassador Young, because I continue to nurture and manage those relationships. So what are past relationships that you have neglected to nurture? I want to challenge you to think about all the relationships in your life. First one should be with your family. Next, with your employees. Because without great employees, you cannot provide great service to your clients. And then your vendors and your suppliers. How do you have that true partnership? And as larger companies, I challenge you to reach out to smaller companies. Because one of the greatest things about working with a small company that's hungry, they're going to bring you some great ideas. You spend thousands and sometimes millions of dollars on consultants when you can just partner with the right 2 or 3 small companies for services that you're already buying and get better results. Be willing to do that. So hopefully you've heard those 4 Ps and just took 1 or 2 things from it. Like I said, I don't look to excite you, but I hope you walk away and utilize just 1 or 2 things that we shared today. We talked about having that purpose. Are you living your God-given purpose? Are you living your God-given purpose? What are those non-negotiable principles, those values that you will die by, you're willing to die for, but you're going to live by? And then that plan. What is that game plan? If I ask you today for your plan, could you pull it out and give it to me in writing? Could you give it to me in writing? And then the people. Who's going to be part of your team? Who's going to help you live your dream and get out of the situation that's in your life? As always, in closing, I challenge you to be the best you possible, because guess what? Everybody else is taken. If you try to be anybody else, you can only be second best. And if you're second best, the view never changes. You're always looking at somebody's hindsight. So with that, it's been a pleasure. We'd love to, once again, work with anyone that want to stop by tomorrow morning. We start at 8 o'clock, and you'll be out by lunchtime, as they say, because I know I'll be hungry. I want to go try out one of the great local eateries that the team down here has been sharing with me. All right, thanks a lot. and hopefully you will move forward here on this journey. Take care.